Hey y'all, and welcome to Politibrawl. My name is Brian, and RFK Jr. calls out this dirty Democrat for taking money from Big Pharma, and all hell soon breaks loose in Congress. Let's dive in.
I have about a half a minute left. Let me just say, I don't say any of these things, Mr. Secretary, out of any, not liking you in some way. And I know I probably shouldn't say this, but, President Kennedy was my hero when I was growing up. RFK, I worked on his campaign before he was assassinated. Joe Kennedy was my friend, had the office next to me when I was first elected. Patrick Kennedy, still a friend. The younger Joe Kennedy was a member of our committee. I thought did a great job. I admire you. I admire your family. I admire your work that you did on the environment. But it's just very upsetting at this point to me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Secretary Kennedy, for being with us today. I want to begin by commending you for the work your department and the administration has done to make improvements in the health of the American people and to be responsible stewards of our tax dollars. Time and time again, we heard from the prior administration mismanagement across the department, but I'm particularly concerned about the damage inflicted to public trust in our health institutions. Unsurprisingly, when faced with sweeping mandates, the American public responded with skepticism and mistrust. I know you've already taken steps to restore public trust in our health institutions. Do you see those as being successful in the near future, or over what timeline?
We're going to restore public trust, Congressman, Vice Chairman, by restoring truth. We're going to tell the truth to the American people, and we're going to use evidence-based science, gold standard science. As I said, we're going to use replication. If I can take a minute just to respond to something that Congressman Pallone said, and I'll address you, Congressman Pallone. 15 years ago, you and I met. You were at that time a champion for people who had suffered injuries from vaccines. You were very adamant about it. You were the leading member of Congress on that issue. Since then, you've accepted $2 million from pharmaceutical companies in contribution, more than any other member of this committee. And your enthusiasm for supporting the old ACIP committee, which was completely rife and pervasive with pharmaceutical conflicts, seems to be an outcome of those contributions.
Mr. Chairman, point of order. Point of order.
The chair recognizes
Point of order. The
Dr.
gentleman is impugning the reputation of a member of Congress.
Mr. Pallonefor.
Stop the clock.
Can you stop the clock for a second? Can you state the point of order?
Yeah. He was impugning Mr. Pallone's
Mr.
reputation.
Chairman, I didn't hear it. Did the
Oh,
gentleman?
you weren't paying attention. That's why.
Well, it's hard to pay attention here when we're not getting any responses.
Okay,
My
okay.
understanding now is that the secretary said something about me taking money from pharmaceuticals. Is that what he said?
Why he's not fighting for
The secretary implied that Mr. Pallone would not fight for vaccine victims because he took money from the pharmaceutical industry.
Again,
He needs to take back those words.
Okay, here we go.
Taken down.
This, Mr. Secretary, this is a valid point of order, I'm told. So I'd ask you if you would, please take back those words.
They're retracted.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to continue on with the decorum that I mentioned earlier in this hearing. And what we're going to do is to go to Dr. Dunn to finish up his time of questioning. Dr. Dunn is recognized.
There are definitely worse congressional kerfluffles out there, and this is definitely not even in the top 10. But something happened here that I don't think a lot of people will catch, because the greatest hero of this video is not Secretary Kennedy. It's the cameraman. The cameraman stayed on one person the whole time, and the camera never shifted back and forth between any of the other members. What you saw in those brief moments were not one, not two, but three lobbyists all conferring with each other, trying to figure out what was going on. Then you saw a whole bunch of other staff members trying to mutter amongst themselves, trying to figure out what they do next. Most of these looked like they were working with ranking Democrats, which were, at least from the camera view, on the stage right, which is actually our left side of the situation. So yeah, that was a very interesting thing to note, that all these little lobbyists started getting very, very chirpy. And one of the Democrats came in out of nowhere trying to point something out and Frank Pallone himself, the dude that was technically besmirched by Senator Kennedy, even though he's pointing out something that's kind of obvious, that if they met 15 years ago to talk about a certain topic, let's say topic X here, and all of a sudden 15 years later, that dude is no longer talking about topic X because he's being paid by people who don't like talking about topic X. You have to wonder what's really going on. So I looked at open secrets, and I looked at the top 20 industries contributing to campaign committees. The campaign committee for Frank Pallone is the Shore PAC, and the top industries that paid into his PAC were health professionals, mostly on an individual but on a small private scale, and then pharmaceuticals/health products. That was number 1 and number 2. The health professionals gave a total of $334,000 just for the 2023-2024 cycle. Pharmaceuticals/health products, $294,000. I think we found the smoking gun here, ladies and gentlemen, that when you want to talk about certain topics, and then magically you don't want to do that anymore because the very people who don't like it when you talk about certain topics took your money, gave you money, and then you decided to take their money and run? All right, buddy, that's a bold strategy. And that's not something I'm going to particularly look down on a person for. By definition, you are sort of selling yourself. And that is a little bit slimy, just to say the least, but it's hard to do politics on an empty treasury. And because you might want to do X, Y, and Z, but someone's saying you can't do X, but we'll help you do Y and Z, well, are you going to throw the baby out with the bathwater? But that's congressional logic right there, that you might want to sell yourself short so you can get a guaranteed thing, then gamble that you can do it alone and get everything you want. That is the ugly calculus of politics, but RFK Jr. is right to call this man out, because RFK Jr. is a former Democrat who ran briefly in the 2024 campaign as a Democrat. They wanted him gone. They wanted him off the books because he was saying the uncomfortable things that the American people are starting to scratch their chins and go, wait a minute, he's got a point here. And then I think the other unsung hero of this video is Buddy Carter, who correctly allowed the Democrats, and even though I don't really like it when Democrats bring up a point of order because they misused it so poorly in the past 4 years, Buddy Carter did let the Democrats have their say, and he did let Frank Pallone have his name sort of no longer smirched according to the record. RFK Jr. was forced to recant, and he did so on purpose. But you could, again, tell that the rest of those lobbyists knew that those shots were taken on purpose, no pun intended. So Buddy Carter correctly gave the Democrats their day, because you need to do that if you want to keep up some legislative peace and quiet. That's what you need to do when you run a committee. And by the way, Buddy Carter is looking awful senatorial in this video, and he's currently, according to reports, eyeing a run here in my home state of Georgia. So that's going to be an interesting thing to watch. But ultimately, RFK Jr. does have a point, that pharmaceutical industries have massive sway over how people vote in American elections and, just as importantly, in our Congress. As much as I agree with the ruling of Citizens United, I can also be man enough to admit it is a problem for our politics. And it was quite literally the moment where the Democrats started losing their way. They warned that this would happen, and, well, maybe they should have stuck up for themselves and not gone that direction to begin with. But that's water under the bridge, and you can't exactly get that back anytime soon. And because they allowed that to happen, now it's the Republican Party that's questioning the narrative. It's now the Republican Party asking about certain things. It is now guys like Buddy Carter who are telling the Democrats what they can and can't be offended by in a congressional hearing. And RFK Jr. now has more power than all of them combined. And guess who isn't bought by those same lobbyists? This is an unusually beautiful moment. but it does show the weaknesses and the cracks in our system. Maybe the next thing that DOJ needs to look after is how deeply embedded our lobbying system is and what needs to be exposed and what doesn't. But that's why I love sites like Open Secrets. That's why I love RFK Jr. here. That's why I love Buddy Carter. And again, shout out to whoever was manning the cameras for this one. You are the real MVP. Folks, my name is Brian. Hope you enjoyed that segment here on Politibrawl. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Catch you on the next one. And until then, y'all have a good one.